Jeep is electrifying their model lineup, so today we have the new Jeep Compass plug-in hybrid for you. We're taking a detailed tour on the exterior, interior and the electrified driving experience here on Autogefühl for you. In Full HD, full screen and full length. Let's go. So the official naming is Jeep Compass 4xe. This 4xe is the naming for their new plug-in hybrid models. And you can see they have some blue accentuations. For example, here the Jeep logo and also at the sides and so on. And we also have a blue vehicle color here for today. It's called Blue Shade. Very nice one indeed with blue shades. You get bi-xenon headlamps starting from the limited trim level. You also can see it right here. We have the Trailhawk for you here today with these off-road accentuations here, and also the approaching and descending angles are of course better than with the Trailhawk version. With the plug-in hybrid it will be different as for the all-wheel drive. We are soon also going to talk about that. In general, the Compass here still displays these typical vertical air vents in the Jeep design. And once again, the Trailhawk then gives you more off-road punch. The length is at 4 meters 40, 14 foot 4 or 173 inches, so a compact SUV. Since we have the Trailhawk version here, we have this trail-rated badge 4x4 and also not too big wheels, 17-inch and with more tire left. Also here has been prepared with these tire spray that they look a little bit cooler than the typical Trailhawk, off-road stylish wheels. I mean, the real off-road wheels would be even more basic, maybe, but this how somehow combines the look. Also, of course, the crossover wheel arches. And then in the plug-in hybrid version, we have here the Compass logo, again framed by this blue look. In general, it has this rather classic building style, more square dimensions, and the main design is here in line with the door handles. I always like that when it's really aligned with the door handles, that looks just cleaner from the design. So when you go for the Trailhawk version, usually you would expect the best off-road characteristics. That's still the case here. However, with the plug-in hybrid drive, you have an electric rear-wheel drive and the combustion engine is powering the front wheels. That's how the all-wheel drive works here. So it's not the classic off-road all-wheel drive you would expect from a normal Trailhawk version. In the rear, we once again see a modern signature right here and the 4xe logo for the PHEV. And once again, the blue Jeep logo accentuations. And I think it fits very well. Even here in this blue color, it looks really, that it would be aligned for this vehicle. Really nice. And typical Trailhawk features also that you have the hook right here. Of course, not for being pulled out yourself, but you pull out some other vehicles, right? As for engines, US starts with a 2.4-liter naturally aspirated engine with 180 horsepower. That's the main Compass engine. In Europe, we get the 1.3-liter turbo petrol engine with 130 or 150 horsepower. And this is also the base then for the plug-in hybrid version. 1.3-liter turbo petrol engine powering the front wheels, plus electric drive on the rear wheels. And then here for the PHEV versions, either 190 or 240 horsepower. The latter one we have here today. And 7.3 seconds is then the acceleration figure to 100 kilometers or 62 miles an hour. So already quite powerful. So the battery is 11.4 kilowatt hours and charging works AC 3 kilowatt or optional 7.4 then. And this gives you a pure electric range of around 40 kilometers or 25 miles, something like that. This is the car key. But you also have the keyless entry. Put your hand on the inside to open, or use this button here to close it. Then door closing sound. That sounds quite solid, like that. Then soft touch at the inside of the doors here, and also these leatherette covers here for the armrest. Then you have the contour stitching here in red, for example, and also around this Alpine sound system speaker. Then the trail hook, you see in the lower part here, also features the rubber mats that you can clean them easier after off-road driving. Red contrast here once again, soft touch dashboard, very round and thick Jeep steering wheel as we used to. Left side here to control the digital instruments, right side for the cruise control. Seats would usually start with the combat either with fabric, or there's also a very nice fabric leatherette mix available in all markets basically. Here, however, the optional animal skin seat, but usually the Trailhawk would also standard feature a premium fabric leatherette mix. Let's now get inside, and of course a very easy entry to this Compass, and you basically have a comfortable seating position. Here the animal skin wrap will be a little bit tighter if it's available in your market, and it will be in most markets. I always recommend the fabric seats also to keep it cooler in summer and warmer in winter, and it's also a little bit softer than from the cushion area, for example. With 1.86 m or 6'1", still plenty of headroom left. There's also a panoramic roof option available. Then you will lose some headroom, but it will still be enough. Nice, however, that we have a bright interior ceiling here, and from this perspective you can see another nice Easter egg there in the front, for example, an old Willys MB Jeep. Really cool. Steering wheel can be controlled like this, up and down and in and out in a manual way. So overall you can also find a comfortable seating position here as a tall driver. In this case also we have the electric seat control and number support electric, and you even have 2 memory seating positions. Interior overview, once again here the soft touch, and then we have this typical styling of the Jeep, which puts the infotainment system right here, and we also have some digital instruments today. So usually it would start 3.5 inch on the left, and then the optional one here is 7 inch, however standard for the hybrid model. And on the right side you would have 5 inch, 7 inch, and here 8.4 inch. However, once again, the PHEV does feature this. So this one here, the 4xe, automatically comes with a setup 7 inch left and 8.4 inch on the right. Soon more details to these screens. Once again, look at the steering wheel, where you have then the cruise control here on the right, for example, and picking up the phone on the left. Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, both available with the cable connection. Then in the lower part here, easy control of the volume, for example, still also some climate knobs, so rather straightforward this control unit. And then it gets really interesting because in the lower part we have the off-road driving modes, but also 4W low and 4W lock and the hill descent control. However, this is not working like, with mechanical links because of this electric all-wheel drive. This is all done electronically now. And also you can pick the hybrid driving mode, like normal hybrid mode, electric when you really want predominantly rear-wheel drive with the all-electric, or e-save when you want to save some battery power for later. Here with the USB-A charging for your smartphone, there's no real space for your smartphone in the front, so that can fly around. So maybe rather use a longer cable and then put it in the cup holders, which are here and also adaptive. And then there's also a special button here for the maximum recuperation. We'll find out more about it while driving. And you can put up this armrest, and then you have some space underneath, but it's not that well attached actually. Infotainment system is probably one of the weakest points of this car. At least we do have the Apple CarPlay here. Most of the time you will probably just use this one here. And the Alpine sound system is quite okay, but not that we would be very impressed by it. Yeah, has some nice punch definitely to it. So, and when you go back then to the normal Jeep menu, you can use the hotkeys in the lower part, but the GPS, for example, is, it's really, really slow. Like all the reaction times and so on. See, it's not really that responsive. So they should have put more effort into the infotainment upgrade. I think at least most of the time you can use the manual buttons just in the interior. Here, a special e-hybrid menu. For example, there you can switch this battery safe to a battery charge mode that you can also recharge the battery while driving. That's not efficient, but maybe it might be useful for some future emission-free zones or something. Then the instruments, left side here, the RPM meter for the ICE, right side the power meter then here for the electric drive, or also when you're recuperating. In the middle part you have the digital instruments, digital speed, that's really helpful, but you can also, for example, check out the total range, here the electric range plus the ICE range, and then you have a total range which is still quite decent overall then. As for the rear compartment, really interesting, you see this rear door almost opens 90 degrees. That's of course a very easy entry, and of course also if you want to install some child seats. You sit relatively high here in the rear. That means for kids it's really cool because they still have a good overview and don't feel too lost. However, the packaging here in the Compass is one of the best in the Jeep model lineup, so that's also what I like about this very model. It's not too long on the exterior, but already delivers you a lot of space on the interior, so a lot of legroom is left and headroom here. Although I'm not sitting too low, still can put a hand over my head with 1.86 m or 6'1", and you have, you know, this upright, nice seating position here in the rear. In the middle tunnel you have USB-A charging and a real power socket. And here we have the ISOFIX on the outside. You do fold the seats from here already, 1/3, 2/3 split. However, what you can also do is just put this middle part down, and then you have automatically a ski hatch to the rear, but at the same time adaptive cup holders here in the middle. As for the trunk area, well, it's not such a compromise because you only lose about 20 liters of trunk capacity. That's okay. Yeah, it takes ages, this electric hatch, right? The thing is that you lose almost 20 liters of fuel tank because of the plug-in hybrid. And that's rather a range problem. You have to even that out by a better fuel economy then. However, here the trunk is actually almost the same as for the normal Compass. Interesting that the electric tailgate button is here at the inside. That's quite nice because you don't have to reach up. You have Easter eggs here, like a logo at the inside part here and also here. So nice Easter eggs here, also at the back part of the vehicle. You can remove this cover here, of course. Then some measures for you. The width here of the trunk is a little bit less than a meter. The normal length here is about 75 centimeters. And the length then to the seat, you see here I fold 2/3, 1/3, but you can also just fold the middle part. That would also be possible. Total length here is 1.60 m. When you put a standard backpack in here, it also fits height-wise, so that's okay. That you have some more imagination for that. Below here, there's a replacement tire, especially of course for the Trailhawk. That's important. And you have nice bags here for the charging cables, for example. The thing is, you know, which one do you need really? Because they do take some space. This is the one for the just normal household plug, for example. It really depends on which one do you have to carry all the time or not. That's the thing, but there's no special like solution where to put it. You can also put it like this, but definitely hindering some of your luggage space. And now to the squish test. Well, the tailgate is quite slow, but does it also stop? Yeah, it wasn't too light, but after all, it did stop. Welcome to Thomas's Driving Lounge with the new Jeep Compass 4xe, the plug-in hybrid. And of course, cool things first, you start all silent and it really does fit to the vehicle. So, I mean, a couple of years ago, we wouldn't have imagined that maybe like an electrified Jeep. But it's really cool, you have this upright seating position, and especially when you, for example, start in the city, it's just relaxing to drive. You don't annoy anyone with emissions or with exhaust sound or so. So it's really suitable for city driving. It also starts electrically when you're in the hybrid mode and you just keep it rather steady. If you really want to stress that electric driving or really want to be sure you're driving electric, then you can also switch to the electric mode. Then it's actually more ensured that it's all electric then. Then we also have the rear wheel drive, so when we accelerate, then I also feel that the car is being pushed from the rear rather than being pulled from the front, which would be this normal front wheel driven platform here. The typical ICE all-wheel drive models are working a little bit differently here than with the electric all-wheel drive. So in this hybrid mode, I can also have an electric all-wheel drive, and we can also activate it then with these off-road gauges. So because you might want to be in an off-road situation, and then you can still activate that. Of course, you cannot expect the same performance as for off-road driving, but it still works. And we can also go to this e-safe mode. Then I could, for example, charge the battery because there's another electric motor here in the front, but it's not directly powering the wheels. It's more for the power generation then. So we can let the combustion engine run and still charge the battery for a later use. That's not efficient, but it might be necessary at some point when you are driving into an emission-free zone or something. This will be something which will be more prominent than in the future. So, and here, for example, when running downhill, I just go off the throttle, and then we have some recuperation, not as strong, but I can also activate this button I showed you earlier in the interior part, and then they have a stronger deceleration, a stronger recuperation. I also see these charging gauges. Still, it's not that strong, so you can hammer the brakes, and then more recuperation is being done until you reach the point of maximum recuperation, and then the normal brakes are being applied. That's also one of the good things about the plug-in hybrids then, and I would probably leave the button here activated all the time, because when you lift your foot off the throttle, then already a deceleration process is happening, and that's usually quite good because also a safety thing, you know. That's why I also prefer driving the electric vehicles with strong recuperation. You lift your foot off the throttle, you have some deceleration, and in the split second you switch from the accelerator pedal then to the brakes, for example, you already, you know, can reduce your speed a little bit, so why not? In this hybrid mode, we have basically on-demand power from both drivetrains, and I can either leave it in the auto drive mode, or I can also put it to sport. In the sport mode here, traction control is off. Yay! We go sporty all out here with the Compass, and you maybe already heard that. In the sports mode also the combustion engine is being activated. This sounds so much different here now, you know, and big contrast to the all-silent drive. And then we also have a stronger acceleration, for example. So there's nothing right behind me. We can just do 0 to 50. That's what we can do here. But that's already it. So almost was 0 to 60. Always the digital instruments are lagging behind a little bit. So you see, especially with the electric drive, you have a lot of power from standstill. That's also a difference to a pure combustion engine. In the higher speed areas, there will be less effect as for that, but definitely quite cool. So you have some indeed decent acceleration power then with this vehicle, and also when you accelerate right out here, you also feel that the electric drive is being pushing a little bit. However, it's a small engine here. You also hear that. So when you apply a lot of throttle, you also feel, it's being stressed a little bit, the small 1.3 engine, but it will be okay when you apply just some throttle. Here in the sports mode, the RPMs are turned up higher as well. So usually I would leave it in the auto mode, and the car is also a little bit more silent, and you can relax a little bit more. And as soon as you have these moments where you just roll a little bit, for example, then you see that the RPMs of the combustion engine drop to 0, and you're just driving in this all-electric drive. And you see also the power meter on the right. The steering wheel, by the way, doesn't give you too much feeling, so it feels a little bit dead. It is somewhat direct, but in a way, in a arcade gaming style. But it doesn't give you the connection between driver, steering, and road. So there's hardly any resistance at all. Noise insulation is actually quite good, and here in the Jeep Compass it's also a little bit better than in the Jeep Renegade and the Fiat 500X, which are sharing the platform. This car will also be built then in Italy, especially of course for the European market, where more and more plug-in hybrids are being requested. Now we are at about 120 kilometers an hour and still driving all electric, and I think the noise insulation is actually quite decent, so don't have to raise my voice that much. And the car is also fairly stable here. We do have the Trailhawk version with the 17-inch wheels that makes it a little bit softer and more off-road-ish. The only thing is, again, you don't have the safest feeling because the connection here with the steering wheel is not the best, but you will survive. Overview is also quite decent because we have this rather conservative building style, so you can also see what's happening around you. And when I'm here at the higher speeds, for example, floor it all out, then also the combustion engine gets active. And that's again a safety thing, because they say when you want to get on the motorway, for example, in a fast way, and you're even in the electric mode, then just that you have the maximum acceleration possible. We can try it again. I was in the hybrid mode, electric mode now, and also here combustion engine is on. When I really put it pedal to the metal, you can check it out how much you can accelerate all electric without this being turned on, and you feel a little bit more resistance in the pedal. So when I put it down now, more resistance, and at some point there's like this threshold point, and then you feel, when you surpass that, then the combustion engine gets on. So for whom does that make sense here, this drivetrain? When you go like so many kilometers or miles per year and just straight and a lot of motorway, probably not. Then you just carry around this weight. But when you have a lot of city driving included and like topography changes where you can use this recuperation advantage, and when you can recharge frequently, and for example say you commute to work electrically during the week and then you make a longer trip on the weekend, then for example it makes sense. Or in general, when you want to say you try to drive it as electric as possible, but still want to go all electric because your charging infrastructure is not perfect, for example, but you want to take the first step. And of course, depending on the country regulations and taxation system and so on, it can make sense also monetary, because you can save a lot of taxes with the plug-in hybrid vehicles. However, the total price then here, the entry price is higher. So here, as it drives right now here, about 50k euros or dollars. Well, I have to say euros because in the US the Compass models are really cheaper, So the Jeep prices in the US are way lower than we have in Europe. So, and then if you think the European perspective, 50,000 euros here for the Jeep Compass, that's a little bit fierce indeed. Then it could only help you that you get some benefits when you go for an electrified vehicle, and also some running benefits, and again with the tax savings and so on, and maybe also fuel economy savings. But the thing is, it's always really tough for us reviewers to give you a very accurate figure of plug-in hybrid vehicle consumption, because it really depends on recharging. So you can really balance them from the fuel consumption and from the electric consumption. It really depends on. But what makes sense is that you can always use the recuperation. So no rolling energy is basically lost in that much, especially when you're going downhill. And so you can usually keep the fuel, the pure ICE fuel economy pretty good, and use both simultaneously. That usually accounts for a good mix. But there might also be situations where you don't use any fuel at all because you just recharge it fast enough. The pure electric range, as we said earlier, so somewhat around about 40 kilometers or 25 miles. That again also depends on your driving profile. But I can just stress again, driving in all electric is really a lot of fun, especially because the Jeep engines are quite loud if you also compare it to the competitors. And this insulation is quite good, so the engine sound is the one thing that really sticks to your mind. Then this electric drivetrain is even helping you more somehow to feel more relaxed, and the whole car feels more refined, more modern with this silent drivetrain. So I would drive it all electric all the time, as far as it goes. Of course, at some point it's depleted, and then for a longer motorway run, it doesn't make such a difference then anymore. At the end of our test ride, we will also give you the consumption figures. You cannot really take them 100% representative, but somewhat you can see what's the possible average when you have the battery charged. And this is also something pretty typical as we had on our other plug-in hybrid rides. Here we are at about 3 liters on 1 kilometers for the fuel consumption, again because we have used a lot of the electric range, but we also went down from 40 kilometers to 20 kilometers electric range, so definitely always playing together. Doesn't give me a kilowatt hours on 1 kilometer consumption. Some PHEVs do that, some don't. We also have the e-hybrid gauges here. There, for example, We see how much power is being generated or how much we can go back. The visualization is somewhat, mediocre. So at least we can see, or probably more the co-drivers can see, what is happening. And here, with the rear wheels, and here, for example, see electric drive just from the rear wheels. Or when I hit the brakes, then some recuperation is being done back to the battery and so on. And when I floor it out once again, I can see also front wheels being activated. It's funny that they actually display that in blue. The ICE is displayed in blue, whereas all the accentuations on the outside are blue, signalizing the electric drive. And all the other plug-in hybrids usually use blue also for, the hybrid drivetrain. Yeah, but whatever, that's, I think, just a matter of color perspective. I really have to say it's probably the best Compass ride I had so far, as long as we're driving electric. If you again use it for longer mileage, then probably still the base engine as you get in the US, that this 2.4 liter naturally aspirated engine with some more displacement is still a suitable one. In the EU we do not get that at all. So we have either the 1.3 turbo or then the plug-in hybrid, and there, in this case, if I would imagine having this engine here without the electric drivetrain, probably that's a little bit too weak then, and you're totally missing out on these electric driving moments, which are really relaxing here for us. So definitely in Europe I would go for this plug-in hybrid. And of course, that is still the case with the Compass. It's really compact to drive, so it's really not big at all. So in the city you get along very, very well. You can find good parking spots and so on, but still can carry all your family already with the space you have on the inside. And that's of course also counting for the plug-in. Oh, it's really nice. You can't see it on camera, but the Easter egg Willis Jeep MB I showed you earlier in the front, that is also putting another shadow of this small Jeep image on the bright A-pillar. It also looks funny, depending on the sunshade, of course. So, very interesting impressions here from the plug-in hybrid version of the Compass. More and more PHEVs coming here up also on our Autogefühl channel. This is definitely a theme where we have this transition phase. Or then again, it's all about the use case. How long you drive, how often, which times, which times of the day, and what about your charging infrastructure. Not only the public one, but to me always, especially at home. And if I could recharge at home frequently, and for here this one, a normal household plug would be just enough, then I see no reason not to go for it. Well guys, as you see, I also brought AJ with me here today. So, and as we have him here, why not give him a shot with the driving part as well?
Absolutely. 2 presenters for the price of 1. What could go wrong? Now it's my turn behind the wheel of the new Compass hybrid, the plug-in hybrid. As Thomas mentioned, I think ultimately it makes a lot of sense to get this plug-in hybrid version if you're going to be driving in the city as well as doing miles on the highway. Like Thomas was also mentioning, when you do floor it, it does take a little bit of time. There's several things that have to happen. When you floor it, the electric motor spins, but again, there's a traction control to make sure you're not spinning the rear wheels, because you get a lot of torque with the electric motor. The gearbox has to shift down while the engine is starting up again. So there's several things that have to happen, and therefore, when you floor it, you see that there's a little bit of delay. So ultimately, at least in the auto mode, it's not the most engaging to drive. So let's switch to sport mode and see if it fares any better. Another thing I'm missing in this sport mode is the lack of paddle shifters. Of course, you don't get them. These buttons here are to navigate through the instruments and the infotainment. But you do have the manumatic mode with the automatic transmission lever, so you can flip it to the left, push it up to shift down, push it back to shift up, which perhaps is useful if you want to take more control if you're going downhill. But ultimately, leaving the regen mode on all the time still gives you that kind of, that more engine braking, that pseudo engine braking effect, even though it's not really engine braking, it's recuperation, it's regen braking. But speaking of that, I'm also missing the, like a spectrum to decide how much of this recuperation I want the car to have. Because honestly, this level, if I let it go down now, is not enough. So it doesn't give you that one pedal feel like a lot of other plug-in hybrids and electric cars offer you. The regen can be set to such a high level that you can use it to almost come to a complete stop. Not completely, but enough to, at least in slow city traffic, or for most of the time when you're always maintaining momentum, you can have that one pedal mode, which this doesn't provide. And ultimately that brings me to kind of my overall impression of the Jeep Compass as a whole, as a product. And that is that it seems a bit unsophisticated. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean that it's a little bit, maybe even in an endearing way, it's a little bit unsophisticated. It seems like these things it was put together without taking too much stress. And while that might be okay, some things do show. Like, for example, it is such a big oversight to have the USB and the auxiliary cable ports right there and have no place to put a phone. I mean, it's 2020, come on guys. You gotta have a place to put your phone. And compared to its siblings like the Renegade, there's so much more practicality on offer. So, I don't know, it doesn't make sense to me. Let's spend a couple times going around this roundabout, and you can also notice that the body control actually is fairly good. And that brings me to another observation, is that the suspension seems ever so slightly on the stiffer side. It's hard to differentiate, because it does have a lot more rubber on the tires, but the added weight of the electric motor, the added weight of the battery, as well as, the internal combustion engine. So there's a lot more weight on this platform. So they have recalibrated the springs, and the Trailhawk, of course, is a little bit more off-road capable, the off-road capable version with bigger tires, more ride height. And so ultimately, the suspension has been recalibrated, but it does seem like it's sprung on the stiffer side. The cushier tires definitely help, but ultimately, it does feel a little bit on the stiffer side. But the good part is it gives good body control. Like Thomas also mentioned, the steering is really light, and there is very little feedback to speak of. There is a little bit of vagueness, which, if it's some consolation, it does kind of mimic the fact that, it's an off-road car, and off-road cars by tradition are ladder chassis with body on top, and those also have a very vague, floaty steering. So maybe you like it because you're used to this. But ultimately, I wouldn't say it's very sporty. Even in sport mode, it's not the most engaging, and like again Thomas said, this engine is loud, it seems stressed out, and so ultimately if you're going to be driving this car on the streets, on winding country roads like we are right now, maybe the Trailhawk is not the one for you. But overall, it is fairly comfortable. The seats are also fairly plush. They do have that sense of tautness and tightness, which might seem a bit firm, but ultimately it is pretty cool. In the sport mode, any slight suggestion with your throttle immediately results in the engine revving up and the gearbox shifting down, which I think is a bit unnecessary. When you have two electric motors, I think the torque should be substituted with these electric motors, and the gearbox doesn't have to work so hard. So again, that little bit of unsophistication in an otherwise very, very pleasing and very charming package.
And now to our conclusion for today with the Jeep Compass plug-in hybrid. First of all, exterior-wise, I really like the blue accentuations they have there, so I think styling-wise, it's definitely a plus. And the Compass here, short exterior dimension, but already a lot of space on the inside. That's one of the best things about this vehicle. The interior sophistication we talked about, that could be a little bit better. The infotainment system should also be more modern. Probably two downsides of this vehicle, but you also have some nice seating materials, not today in this very vehicle, but in generally available. And the plug-in hybrid drivetrain is very interesting. So driving it all electric is so much fun. Who would have expected that from a Jeep a couple of years ago? So I would recharge it as frequently as possible, and then it also makes sense, especially some city driving and so on, or maybe some changing topography where you can use the regenerative braking and so on. Then this car really makes sense. When you have a lot, high mileage and so on, you're driving motorway all the time, then it's not really the suitable drivetrain. Especially our friends in the US will just stick then with the 2.4 liter natural aspirator engine. But here for Europe purposes, this will be the thing in the future. The entry price is quite high, but then again you get some tax benefits and so on that at the end of the day it can pay off. I can just stress again, driving it all electric is the most fun to go then here now with the Compass. So probably, especially with this blue color, the Trailhawk version also still looks fancy, and since there's no typical off-road transfer case and so on, this then in this case is more a design thing with the Trailhawk. But why not? Why would you buy a Jeep to have this off-road look as well? So I hope you enjoyed our episode for today with Thomas and also with AJ. Give us your comments and see you next time.